T, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you for making the time for this. I really, really appreciate it, because I'm just like completely in a jam with my theory of knowledge class. I don't know how this happened, but I kind of promised them that I would refute skepticism, and now I have to do this thing. And I know I can't do it by myself, but I'm pretty sure I could do it with you, because you're a philosopher, you're a gamer, you know how this is done, right?
Right.
Okay, so like the context that I have here, which is, I presume, probably somewhat similar to the context that you and a lot of other philosophers have, is that there's different kinds of skepticism. There is what I think of as a kind of declarative skepticism versus a procedural skepticism. So the declarative skepticism is like the academic skeptic, the guy like Unger or Carneades, who up and up tells you that knowledge is almost impossible or impossible to obtain. It's humanly out of reach. That's a theory. He's telling you that. He's telling you that knowledge is not something you can get. And that guy is, in my opinion, not the scariest skeptic. I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel like if you get out there and say, oh, human beings can't know anything, you're opening yourself up for attack. And for me, at least, the skeptic that really freaks me out is the Pyrrhonian skeptic, because he's procedural. And for him, skepticism isn't a theory, it's a practice, it's a game, it's something that you do. And
I mean,
am I right about that?
Yeah, I mean, my sense is that like the declarative skeptic is immediately obviously hypocritical, because they're giving you an argument and they're like, look, you can't know anything, but here are the 15 steps to which you will have a conclusive, and you're immediately like, you can go transcendental. You can be like, wait, where'd that certainty come from? Can I get more of that? Can I follow you down that? But like the Pyrrhonic skeptic is not even committed to skepticism in any full-blown sense, and so they're a more respectable, coherent figure.
Right. And if you have a guy like Sextus Empiricus, he's just exploring. He's just going to continue the search. He's going to ask a question, then he's going to ask another question. He's going to play this game where it's always just, are you sure? He's going to raise hypothetical possibilities. He never has to establish anything. He doesn't have to prove that you're a brain in a vat. He just has to say, what if you are? Try this on for size, let's just play. And he teaches you something too, but he's teaching you a game. Here's a game you can play. Instead of ever buying something that your adversary says, you just always sit there with like this expression on your face, one eyebrow lifted. I can't lift my eyebrows, but
one thing I always feel like is like the Pyrrhonian skeptic in philosophy, and then a related social version, is definitely too cool for school. Like they're definitely it is definitely a position in which you never have to stake anything.
Yeah.
You're never in danger.
Yeah.
All the weight is on the other person.
Yeah.
And you have this I think of it as like you're setting up an unfair game, because your move is incredibly easy, and then you force the other person to do this really hard thing. But you can fire in the game you've set up, you can fire back with this incredibly easy move that requires no thought or work from you.
Yeah, you just keep asking, are you sure? And so if you're a Pyrrhonian skeptic and you're on your game, you can never be beaten. You can also not maybe win that much either, though, because all your agency is tied up in that game of, are you sure? Let's investigate this further. But really hard to beat. And this is why I think G.E. Moore kind of has it going on, because I feel like G.E. Moore is also a little bit of a gamer, right? Like he's also somebody who's not just going to tell you a theory. He's going to make a move, like literally make you a move, right? Like he's going to say to the skeptic something like, hey, skeptic, you're claiming that there's no external things. Well, talk to the hand, right? And if you're not buying that, here's another one, right? Let me show you. This is a game we're going to play. And doing it like that, just taking a lunge, taking a step, taking certain things for granted, trusting yourself in certain ways, that's very freeing. That's very liberating, right? And I mean, he shows you his hands. He doesn't give you like a declarative proof that the hands are there. In fact, he's kind of, not so much committed to the idea that that's even possible. It's just he's trying to, well, everyone says he's trying to kind of relocate the burden of proof, but I kind of feel like it's more like he's trying to show you, here's another game we could play. And isn't this a cooler game, right? Like it's a game in which you don't have to say, whoa, there might or might not be water in this bottle because, could be all kinds of crazy things going on. It's a game in which you can just, take a drink of it, right? Trust it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I find interesting in, and I used to be like super into these various skepticisms and was talked out of it, is the argument that convinces me is not something like, here is a disproof of the skeptic, but imagine life if you have to play the Pyrrhonic game. What's your life going to be like? That's kind of going to suck. Imagine life if you're playing the Morian game. That's a life that actually you get to actually do some stuff and go somewhere. Isn't that better?
Yeah, it is. You know, what the Pyrrhonians are always going to tell you is that they think you can get by on custom and habit. You can get by on the involuntary impressions, right? The Pyrrhonian says you don't have to stand there in denial and say, I do not feel hot when the sun is beating down on you. You can instinctively move to the shade. But my feeling is, what the Pyrrhonian skeptic is doing is he's really divorcing your epistemic agency from the rest of your agency, right? So you can't take yourself to be actively like working to successfully figure things out and then live in the light of that. Rather, your regular agency just has to truck along on autopilot in terms of your instincts, and your epistemic agency is all tied up in like, I'm not going to accept anything. Can't be too careful. But anyway, okay, so this is where you come in, because I worry that sometimes my students don't fully buy the Morian thing, and it's partly because Moore is giving you a game, but it's a game for only one person. It's a solo player game, and the sad thing is you can imagine the solo brain in a vat playing the Morian game all by itself, like, okay, I just read the G.E. Moore, yeah, check it out, right? And what's it seeing? It's seeing its little phantasm hands, and the real people who are outside the vat are looking down on it, rubbing their actual external thing hands and saying, oh, poor thing. It thinks it's, in an actual environment, and it's not. It's got all these false beliefs. So I feel like it's one of these games that it works better in multiplayer mode. And I have to ask you, like, as a video gamer, like, do you think that there are some games that really you have to play multiplayer, that just the solo player experience is not as good?
Yeah, I mean, actually, one of the interesting things I think is most of my favorite games are essentially multiplayer, and I have this theory that like the gaming literature really focuses on these single player narrative video games because they're the most recognizable if your theory of art centers on fiction or movies. And okay. Single player, there's less explosively emergent interaction, and so you can actually have a controlled script. But I think multiplayer, like most board games, are essentially multiplayer, and the interesting stuff is the degree to which interactions between our agency give rise to this kind of explosively emergent, wildly changing creative space. So, I mean, for me, most of the best games are essentially multiplayer and are something we do together and gives shape to this like emergent narrative that's coming out of our reactions to each other.
That is so cool. Like, I think there's these sort of non-linear interactions between people. I did not see where you were going with that, and yeah, I like that. I think that's good. And I also feel like there's a sense in which when you're playing in multiplayer mode, you're really combining your agency with that of another person, and there's things that you can do together that exceed the powers that either one of you would have as an individual. Yeah. Okay. So that's really cool. So anyway, the idea of this sort of multiplayer thing is, I've always felt when students start saying to me, man, I'm really worried that I might be a brain in a vat. I always want to say back to them, here's the thing that I bite my tongue, but this is what I want to say back to them. You know what really bugs me about you being so obsessed that you're a brain in a vat? What really bugs me about it is the idea that, like, what does that make me? If you're a brain in a vat, like, what am I? I'm just some kind of like phantasm. I'm some back-end NPC in this program.
Yeah, you're an NPC.
Yeah, I don't want to be an NPC. I am not an NPC. That is one thing I'm pretty sure of, right? And so I feel like if you think about the status of the person that you're interacting with, it's much harder to be so sunk in this world of maybe I'm a brain in that. It's actually kind of cool. The thing you just said before about how a lot of academics work on solo player games, I wonder too if that isn't part of what goes on in academia, right? That you're there, you're a lone researcher. I mean, especially in a discipline like philosophy, maybe not so much in biology or psychology where you're interacting with a lot of people in the lab, but philosophy, we do a lot of solo work, like alone at the keyboard. And maybe sometimes we lose sight of the kind of results you can get in interaction with other people. So.
I've had this interesting thought that sometimes like among the most intimate I've felt with another mind is when we play chess against each other or something like this, because in order to play chess well, you have to be like, well, I'm going to do this, but then they're probably going to do that. So you get to get a space where you like, when you're playing chess well, both of you are looking 10 moves ahead down the same chain. And if you play well, you're like, I saw exactly how you explore this entire space and exactly what your intentions are. And it's interesting because I think because the rules are so delineated and so tight, you actually, I mean, it's one of the closest experiences to telepathy we have because the rational space is so delimited that we can start to predict each other's moves 20 steps, 30 steps down the line. Think about how close that is.
Yeah, and I also feel in a game like that, when a person defies your expectation at some point,
right,
you have a certain very sharp sense of what makes them individual.
Right.
They had a style that you did not see coming, right?
Right.
I think this is also kind of true in the sense of human interactions with, AlphaGo or AlphaGo Zero, right? That they can hit you with that. With that punch you didn't see coming. Although now all of a sudden I feel like I shouldn't have raised that because that could trigger some thoughts that I don't want anybody in my theory of knowledge class to have about the whole NPC thing. Never mind. we'll just maybe edit that little bit out. Okay. So basically all we have to do is I'm not going to be cool just like looking at my hands, even though my hand has the word external thing written on it. This is just to keep track. Right. Even though it has that could be happening in that, but basically here's the question I have to ask you, having just read Trust as an Unquestioning Attitude, is Nguyen, do you trust me?
Yeah.
You do, but you're an epistemologist, right? Isn't an epistemologist always supposed to be questioning? And
well, no, if you're an individualist epistemologist, yes. But if you're my kind of epistemologist, you've come to peace with the fact that most of your life is led with enormous cognitive pipelines open to the world, and that you're just...
Which is a good thing, actually, because we can't confront this cognitive onslaught on our own.
I once actually while I was working on this stuff, I had a student who one time was like, "Look, I never trust anything. I never trust anybody. This is why your theory is like so like he was like, I am my own man. I don't trust anybody." I was like, okay, how many people did you trust with your life on your drive in here on the highway? And he literally melted down in front of me. He started thinking about it, and I mean, the point was his surface.
And he's never been in a car.
No, I don't actually have no idea. But he turned red faced and couldn't even speak, because I think he had this self conception of someone that didn't trust. And I was like, you literally trusted thousands of people with your life on the way in today, just
yeah. I like that a lot. And we trust each other intellectually. So of course I was just asking that question just to get that line out of you. Now I feel so manipulative, but I have to say I trust you too. I really do, like epistemologist to epistemologist. So I can verify. Here's something I can verify for you from where I stand. I can verify that you, Nguyen, are not a brain in a vat. I'm very certain of that. Is there anything you can say to me?
Wait, let's check. We'll see if this works.
Oh,
we're gonna check.
Oh, you're taking the game up a level. I should have seen this coming.
I'm gonna raise some fingers, and I'm gonna note to myself how many fingers I think I've raised, and then you're gonna tell me how many you see, and we'll see if my tracking of reality matches your tracking of reality.
Okay.
The question is, does this add anything to more?
Oh, wow. Do you want me to say out
Yeah.
loud, or will that be like a spoiler?
No, you can take.
I saw 7.
Oh, that's what I thought too. There's the
Awesome!
question.
Awesome! We got the lock. Same reality. Yeah. Okay. So I have verified for you that you are not a brain in a vat. Are you in a position from where you stand to do that for me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Cool. We're not brains in vats, either of us. Do you think the students are going to buy this when I show them the video tomorrow, that like we're done, we're out of?
No, I mean, it's because it's on Zoom. If it was in real life, they'd buy it. But on Zoom.
What? But here's my thought. This is actually inspired by something an undergraduate said to me last term on Zoom in the chat, which is just kind of like, do you think the people who were actually there, physically present in the room in the British Academy in 1939, listening to Moore saying, here is one hand and here is another, did they get more out of G.E. Moore's proof than the rest of us who are just like reading it in a book? Like for us, it's like, well, you could be a brain in that, and that book's been piped in, right? People who are actually there live, did they get more out of it than we do as just readers?
I mean, from visual contact with his hands,
yeah,
I don't think so. I do. I mean, this is probably a sideline that your students don't care about, but I am really, there's just one moment in one of Plato dialogues where that I don't think epistemologists pay enough attention to, where Socrates says something like, I never trust an argument that's written down, because you can't ask the person questions to see if they really understand what they think. And I think that's been ignored because most people don't think that you need to trust someone to listen to their argument. Like that's not part of the philosophical worldview. But I do kind of think that in general, people have a better reason to trust arguers who they have access to, who they can ask questions about and see how they respond.
Yeah.
But that's not a more specific question.
Right. Oh, I hear where you're going with this. But I don't know, like, I think the line I gave my student, at least I think this is the line I gave my student, was something more like, maybe Moore isn't just telling you a story. Once upon a time, there was a guy called Moore who looked at his hands and said some stuff. Like maybe he's giving you a recipe. He's giving you, hey, you can try this at home. You've got hands, or if you don't have hands, amputees can play the game too with any 2 household objects, right? So he's giving them a recipe, he's giving them a strategy. So my hope is with the students that they could try this. Like we're giving them a game. The game is verify the existence of the person of another person and get them to verify your existence. And they could try that. They could try
another game to suggest.
Yes.
This is actually, I'm about to give them my entire dissertation in a single game to play, which is a variation on Moore. It was always intended as a variation on Moore. Maybe you're a moral skeptic, right? Maybe you open the news, read about some events in the world, see if you can maintain your moral skepticism.
Ooh.
Here is one evil thing. Here's another evil thing.
Ouch, that hurts.
I mean, that's what I actually think. That's what I think. I think Moore's. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you. I think that Moore's argument works on moral skepticism too, and structurally similarly. Right.
Yeah, I get that. That makes a lot of sense. So, and like kind of one last question, and actually, so this sort of ties into what you were saying about visual experience. Like, do you ever think that there's a difference between just seeing something, witnessing something passively, and actually interacting with it actively?
You mean in terms of skepticism?
Yes, in terms of your awareness of the reality of something. If you just see something at a distance, so it has a causal impact on you.
Right.
That's one thing. But if you pick it up and this lives and untight. If you pick it up and manipulate it and do stuff with it, do you think you move into a different epistemic position with respect to its existence when you interact with it?
Well, it's going to depend on how good you think the potential simulating AI is. I think.
Stop that! Yeah, actually, so I was wondering if we could go down that whole avenue, because you could start thinking that maybe even if even if the two of us get the rules of the game across to the students, so, okay, you guys, you can go out and play this game, you could still have the worry that maybe I didn't really play the game and I just thought I did with another person. Yep.
Although I will give you the goofiest argument I've ever thought of in response to that, which is totally
already.
Totally
I love
goofy.
It already.
Probably not publishable, but here's the argument. If we're thinking about a brain of that, and you're thinking about whether or not I'm a moral being or not, and we interact, and a computer is simulating this to interact with you, and you interact with me enough such that I fully pass the Turing test and seem like a person with cognition and all that. I kind of think any computer that is doing that simulation, the simulation actually has enough intelligence to have moral worth.
So
right? So I mean, this is
if I'm an NPC, I'm a good one. I'm a really good one.
Anything that made an NPC as good as what's in front of me,
look at that,
to go through all that interaction has to simulate agency enough that.
Okay. I love where you're ending up, because this is where I was going to go. And it's so freaky. Verify for me, we did not rehearse this in advance, right? No, we did not. You were busy all day at some APA session, and I just imposed on you to help me out with my students. So one thing I've thought is, when you kind of look down on the vat from above and you imagine like poor little G.E. Moore doesn't really have hands, but he's a BIV who thinks he does, and that seems very sad. That is much more threatening than if you imagine like a dyad, an interacting dyad, who are invited together, maybe, if they can genuinely, coordinate their objective and subjective states with each other, the way you can in live interaction with another intelligence, then that fat doesn't seem so bad.
I mean, it's like if this stuff is being run in a simulation, but we're actually having a conversation, like, I mean, there's this whole. There's my friend Anthony Cross, who's a really cool philosopher, runs an entire class about the question of, are virtual friendships real friendships? And I think that's the, like, I mean, it's close, but not quite the same as the question is, if you spend a lot of time interacting with someone in World of Warcraft, is that a real friendship or a fake friendship? And if you think the value of the interaction is the thing, then whatever. Maybe I'm brain in the vat, but we're having a conversation. That's what matters.
Nice vat you got there, T. Zoom is a big vat, right? Yeah. But it's a good one. I mean, without it, actually, I'm not sure we would have had this conversation. Like you were saying, it would be more compelling if we were physically in the same space, having the argument and so on. And there's something right about that. But at the same time, I feel like in a weird way, Zoom has kind of flattened out the world and erased certain distances that, Yeah. So that's the silver lining we've all been looking for in this catastrophe. We've gotten ourselves out of skepticism, and I couldn't have done this with anybody else. I will say that. So thank you for this. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I salute you. Good game.
Don't forget to save your progress before the next Zoom.
Wait, what?
Don't forget to save your level before the next Zoom. So.
Oh, yeah. And I have to get back to you on, do you know that game, Tony Hawk Existential Nightmare? I've been playing that a lot lately, and I heard they're going to drop the Pro Edition. Did you hear about this? Yeah, so we should definitely talk about that, because I think there's a lot of levels in that game. Anyway, yeah, another time, right?
Another time.
Okay, take care, T. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.